The galactic combat trials were the greatest spectacle in the universe, where the strongest fighters from countless star systems gathered in the floating arena that stretched across light years and shimmered with energy fields that defied gravity. The crowd was a sea of beings from every corner of the galaxy with shapes and sizes that humans could hardly comprehend. There were warriors with 4 arms and eyes that glowed with psychic power. There were creatures made of living metal, and creatures that could shift forms in an instant. They had trained for decades and centuries, each with their own legends of victories and defeats. They all believed themselves to be the apex predators of the galaxy, and many of them looked at Earth with quiet amusement because the humans who had arrived were few and seemingly fragile. They wore simple uniforms and carried light gear, but their eyes burned with a calm focus that no alien could read. The young human who led the group moved with a confidence that came from knowing limits could be broken and from facing challenges on a planet where survival was a daily test. Unlike other humans who were hesitant or nervous, he held his head high and scanned the arena, calculating distances, angles, and possible traps. He noticed how some aliens underestimated humans by laughing openly at their small size or commenting on their primitive weapons. He did not react outwardly, but inside his mind raced with strategies. He knew the galaxy had never seen the kind of fighters that Earth could produce, and he was determined to make everyone remember. The first announcement came from a hovering holographic figure that radiated authority and power. Its voice echoed across the arena, calling all competitors to the starting zones. The humans moved in formation, careful and precise, while the aliens around them flaunted their strength, some flexing enormous muscles, some demonstrating control over flames or electricity. The crowd cheered wildly for the flashy displays, but the humans remained calm as if nothing could shake their focus. The arena was filled with anticipation and tension as the first trial was about to begin, and whispers ran through the crowd about the small humans and whether they could survive the opening challenge. When the trial started, the aliens immediately took advantage of their speed and abilities, leaping over obstacles and disintegrating barriers with bursts of energy. They looked down at the humans, expecting them to struggle. Yet the humans adapted instantly, noticing patterns in the traps and using momentum in ways the aliens had not considered. The young human leader was the first to make a move, weaving through swinging pendulums and dodging falling platforms while silently guiding his team. Each human moved with agility and awareness that seemed ordinary until they used each small object around them as a weapon or shield. Some of the aliens were caught off guard, seeing humans grab simple rods or ropes and turn them into tools of advantage. The audience gasped as a human vaulted over a pit and landed with perfect balance, using the motion of a swinging chain to propel forward. In moments like these, the aliens began to realize that humans were unpredictable, that their small size and speed could be a weapon, and that their ability to think quickly under pressure gave them an edge no brute strength could overcome. The human leader kept his eyes sharp and noted every movement of his rivals, every pattern and every weakness. He did not boast or scream his triumphs. He simply moved with efficiency and precision, which made the alien spectators uncomfortable because they could not anticipate what would come next. By the end of the first stage of the trial, the humans had passed obstacles that the galaxy's strongest fighters had failed at before. They were not the fastest or the strongest, but their intelligence, their adaptability, and their relentless determination shone through and drew murmurs of disbelief from the crowd. Even the most arrogant champions began to whisper warnings to each other about underestimating Earthlings, and the human leader allowed a small, satisfied smile, knowing that this was only the beginning of the trials and that the galaxy had yet to see what humans could truly do. The excitement in the arena was electric, and every spectator was now waiting to see if these few humans could continue to defy expectations and rise above every challenge the universe could throw at them. The humans stood together, catching their breath, their eyes still focused on the next stage, and the young leader gave a subtle nod, signaling readiness. The other species had expected an easy start, and they had been proven wrong. The galaxy had underestimated Earth, and already a sense of suspense filled the air, because everyone wanted to know what these humans would do next, and if they would continue to surprise the universe with their skill, their courage, and the unstoppable will that seemed to flow from the very core of humanity. The second trial was unlike anything the humans had faced before. It was set in an arena that resembled a vast jungle teeming with danger from every angle. Towering trees with twisting vines, thick fog that rolled in, and creatures of all sizes lurking in the shadows waiting to pounce. The trial was meant to test survival instincts, teamwork, and the ability to adapt to unpredictable environments, and for most species it was a chance to show off their physical dominance. The alien contestants stood proud and confident with their enhanced abilities, their advanced weaponry, and their combat experience, expecting to overpower whatever came their way. The humans, however, approached the trial with a different mindset. They knew the key to surviving this trial wasn't strength or speed, but strategy and timing. They needed to think of the environment as their ally, not as an obstacle. As the trial began, the arena came alive with creatures that were both deadly and relentless. Their eyes glowed in the dark and their claws could tear through solid stone. The first wave of attackers came from the trees, massive predatory creatures that leapt down with a terrifying speed and precision. The aliens reacted with ease, some using their telekinetic abilities to toss the creatures away, others pulling out weapons that released blasts of energy that turned the attackers into nothing more than ash. But the humans stood their ground. They didn't panic. They didn't rush into battle. Instead, they observed the creatures, studying their movements and using their surroundings to their advantage. The human leader quickly assessed the situation and gave a silent signal to his team. They split up, each human moving with purpose and focus. One of the humans found a series of vines that hung from the trees just out of reach of the attacking predators. He used his body weight to swing from vine to vine, evading the creatures below and leading them into a trap where the others were waiting. The rest of the team had been carefully placing barriers of branches and rocks while quietly watching the creatures from the shadows. When the leader swung through the air with the predators on his heels, the humans set the trap in motion. The creatures followed the leader right into the perfect position, and with quick coordination the humans triggered the trap, sending massive logs crashing down on their attackers. The aliens, who had been watching from a distance, were stunned as they saw the humans work together as a unit. Their teamwork so seamless that they made the most dangerous challenge look effortless. The humans didn't stop there. Instead of waiting for the next wave to attack, they decided to take the fight to the creatures themselves. They split into groups with each human, using the terrain in a unique way. Some climbed to higher ground, using the trees to get the drop on the monsters below, while others set up bait and ambushes. They were working like a well-oiled machine, something that the alien competitors could not replicate. They moved without hesitation, each knowing exactly what the others were doing, and executing their plans with military precision. Their attacks were swift and deliberate, and for the first time since the trials began, the audience began to shift their perception of Earthlings. They had come to expect nothing more than failure, or at least a slow struggle, but instead they saw a group of people who were not just surviving the trial but mastering it. By the time the first wave of predators was dealt with, the humans had already begun preparing for the next stage of the trial. There was no time to rest and no room for mistakes. The environment shifted rapidly, changing from thick jungle to an open savanna where massive storms brewed on the horizon. The second phase of the trial was meant to test how well each fighter could survive in an environment where resources were scarce and the weather could turn deadly at any moment. The aliens now found themselves dealing with sandstorms and lightning strikes that sent deadly surges of energy coursing through the air. The humans had no advanced technology to shield themselves from the elements, but they had something far more valuable: adaptability. The human team leader immediately spotted a pattern in the storm's movement and signaled to his team to take shelter in the few rock formations that dotted the landscape. The aliens scrambled to find cover from the harsh winds and blinding sand, while the humans worked together to create a plan. They built a temporary shelter using whatever they could, find rocks, branches, and even the discarded armor of fallen competitors. The shelter was barely more than a crude structure, but it held against the storm's force. The aliens watched as the humans not only survived, but thrived despite the odds. The storm raged for hours, and by the time it passed, the humans were the only ones left in the open field, standing tall and unbroken. The other competitors had either fled or failed to adapt to the harsh conditions, and the audience couldn't help but marvel at the resilience and resourcefulness that the humans displayed. As the trial came to a close, The final challenge was announced, a test of pure combat, where the humans would face off against the strongest of the galaxy's fighters in a direct confrontation. It was a brutal test that would push them to their limits. But the humans were ready. They had learned everything they needed to know from the jungle and the storm. They knew that to win, they had to use every advantage they had, whether it was their environment, their teamwork, or their intellect. The humans had proven something that the galaxy had long overlooked, that their greatest strength was not in their power or speed, but in their ability to adapt, think critically, and fight with a cunning that no one could match. The galaxy's greatest fighters had underestimated them, but they would soon learn that no one could stand against the might of a human determined to win. The final phase of the trial was nothing short of legendary. It was a test of not just strength and endurance, but pure willpower and intellect. The competitors were brought to an arena unlike any they had seen before. It was a vast labyrinth of steel and stone, with walls that shifted and moved and traps that could trigger at the slightest sound. The floor was uneven, filled with pitfalls and obstacles designed to challenge even the most seasoned warriors. The air was thick with tension as the combatants prepared themselves for the ultimate battle. This was not just a fight for survival. This was a fight for respect, a fight to prove who truly deserved to be called the greatest fighter in the galaxy. As the trial began, the contestants immediately scattered their eyes, scanning the shifting walls and unstable platforms ahead. The alien fighters, with their advanced senses and telepathic abilities, expected the trial to be just another test of brute force. But the humans were not there to rely on strength alone. Their leader moved calmly through the labyrinth, knowing that the key to winning was not to be the fastest or the strongest, but the smartest. With each step, he carefully observed the environment, searching for weaknesses and signs of patterns that others had missed. The aliens initially tried to force their way through the maze. Using their powers, they crushed walls and blasted barriers without hesitation. They thought they could overcome anything with sheer power. But the human team moved differently. They relied on stealth, observation, and coordination. The human leader whispered silent commands to his team, and they moved as one, avoiding traps and using the maze to their advantage. While the aliens were focused on brute force, the humans were using their surroundings as a weapon. At one point, an alien fighter, a massive being with the ability to manipulate time, found himself cornered by a wall of shifting stone. He attempted to use his power to bend time and break free, but he didn't account for the unpredictability of the labyrinth. The wall shifted too quickly and trapped him within its confines. The human team leader witnessed this and recognized an opportunity. He immediately signaled his team to take a different path, leading them into a hidden chamber where they could move undetected. The alien fighters continued to struggle against the maze. Their powers were immense, but they were not prepared for the sheer unpredictability of the trial. Their strength alone wasn't enough to solve the puzzle. The humans, however, continued to progress through the labyrinth almost effortlessly. Their movements were precise and calculated, each step taken with careful thought as they avoided deadly traps and used their environment to outwit the more powerful competitors. The alien spectators watched in stunned silence as the humans seemed to glide through the maze, while the other competitors brawled and used raw power to break through obstacles. The humans were taking a more measured approach. They were proving that intellect and creativity could overcome even the most formidable of enemies. As the humans neared the final chamber of the maze, they saw their next challenge waiting. The chamber was massive and filled with a swirling vortex of energy that seemed to pulse with raw power. It was a test designed to force competitors into a final battle against the very forces of nature itself. The alien fighters hesitated, seeing the vortex as an obstacle they had to defeat with strength and power. But the humans approached the vortex differently. The human leader studied it carefully, sensing that the key to overcoming the vortex was not to fight it, but to understand it. With a deep breath, the leader stepped forward into the swirling vortex. The energy rippled around him, but he didn't fight it. He flowed with it, allowing the energy to pass around him like a current. He signaled to his team to do the same. Each human followed, his lead stepping into the vortex and allowing themselves to be swept up in the energy. It was as if they had become one with the trial rather than trying to conquer it. The aliens watched in disbelief as the humans moved through the vortex unharmed. The Vortex itself began to change as the humans adapted to its rhythm. The energy seemed to bend and shift to accommodate them. Their understanding of the trial's true nature allowed them to control the flow of energy rather than fight against it. The other competitors struggled to keep up using brute force to try and manipulate the vortex, but they could not match the humans' calm and controlled approach. When the last of the human team entered the chamber, they stood together facing the swirling vortex which had now calmed in their presence. The aliens were left speechless watching the humans as they emerged victorious without ever resorting to strength or overwhelming power. They had won the trial not through force, but through intelligence and adaptability. In that moment, the galaxy's greatest fighters realized that humanity had something no other species possessed: a unique ability to turn the odds in their favor, with a level of cunning and wisdom that was unmatched. Isho, human leader, turned to his team with a satisfied smile. He had seen the moment where the galaxy's greatest fighters began to respect them. It was not the show of strength that had earned their admiration, but the ability to think differently, to approach each challenge as a puzzle to be solved. It was the human way of fighting with their minds and their hearts, not just their muscles. The trial was over, but the true challenge was just beginning. The humans had earned the respect of the galaxy's most formidable fighters, but they had also made powerful enemies who would stop at nothing to undermine them. It was clear now that the humans were not just another species in the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with, and no one would ever underestimate them again. The aftermath of the trial echoed through the arena like a shockwave. The galaxy's most powerful beings watched in stunned silence as the humans emerged from the maze unscathed, while the rest of the competitors struggled to find their footing. The human team stood together, their expressions calm, but their eyes reflecting the quiet satisfaction of victory. In the space around them, the air was thick with tension. As the other species processed what had just occurred, they had witnessed something that defied their understanding of warfare, something they had never seen before. A group of humans had outwitted and outlasted them all, without ever needing to rely on their brute strength or otherworldly powers. Instead, it was their minds, their unity, and their unrelenting will to survive that had carried them through. But the humans knew that their success came at a price. The respect they had earned from the galaxy's warriors was matched only by the growing resentment and suspicion that brewed in the hearts of their competitors. Alien champions who had once laughed at Earthlings now narrowed their eyes with fear and anger. They could not comprehend how the humans had succeeded, and in the quiet corners of the arena, the whispers began to turn into plans for retaliation. They were no longer just fighting for glory. They were fighting for their pride, their reputation, and for the future of their species. It was clear that no one would allow the humans to go unchallenged for long. In the days that followed, the human team was faced with both admiration and hostility. The crowds that once mocked them now cheered for them, but there was an undercurrent of tension that couldn't be ignored. In private meetings, some of the alien leaders plotted their next move, while others began to forge alliances to ensure that humanity would not dominate the trials again. The humans had become a symbol of something greater than just victory. They were now a threat to the established order of the galaxy. The human leader felt the weight of this new reality settling on his shoulders. He had known that this competition would change things, but he had never imagined how quickly it would escalate. With every step they took in the trials, they had created enemies as well as allies, but the question remained whether these alliances would hold, or whether the jealousy and fear that had begun to fester would tear them apart. The human team gathered in their quarters discussing their next steps. They knew that the coming trials would not be as simple as the last. They had proved themselves, but that only made them a target, a powerful target. One of the team members, an older man with a sharp mind and a keen sense for strategy, spoke up. His voice was low but firm. "We've proven our point, but now we have to be smarter. We've won their respect, but that doesn't mean we're safe. These next trials could be different, and we have to be ready for anything." The human leader nodded in agreement. His gaze was steady as he surveyed the faces of his team. The moment of victory had passed, and now the real battle began. The other competitors would stop at nothing to take them down. If they wanted to survive, they would have to stay one step ahead and outthink their opponents every time. Meanwhile, in the shadows, the alien conspirators were making their move. A group of high-ranking officials from several species met in secret to discuss their plans to eliminate the humans from the trials. They were not concerned with fair play or honor. They wanted power and control. And the humans had upset the balance they had worked so hard to maintain. The conspirators knew that direct confrontation with the humans would only lead to more humiliation. They had already seen what happened when the humans used their minds to outmaneuver their strongest champions. No, they needed to be more subtle to win this battle. They would use sabotage alliances and betrayals to undermine the humans at every turn. They would break their morale, wear them down until they were nothing more than a shell of their former selves. But the humans were not blind to the danger. The human leader had sensed the shift in the atmosphere after their victory. He had seen the way some of the alien fighters now looked at him with a mix of fear and disdain. And he had noticed the quiet whispers that had started circulating. Among the spectators, it was clear that the humans were no longer just participants in the trials. They were a threat to the galaxy's status quo. And in a galaxy that prized strength above all else, that made them the most dangerous kind of target, the human team would not be caught off guard. They had come too far to let their enemies sabotage them now. They had proven themselves in every challenge so far, and they would continue to prove that humanity's greatest strength was not in their ability to overpower their foes, but in their ability to adapt and overcome against all odds. The conspirators could plot all they wanted, but the humans would not break. As the next round of trials loomed, the human team began to prepare. They studied the competition with a new sense of urgency. Their minds were sharp, their bodies were ready, and their resolve was unshakable. They had earned their place among the galaxy's greatest warriors, and they would fight to keep it at all costs. The galaxy had underestimated them before, but they would never make that mistake again. The arena stood silent as the new challengers gathered. The next round would begin soon, but the question on everyone's mind was whether the humans would continue to defy the odds or whether the galaxy's champions would finally break their spirit. The trials were far from over, and the humans had only just begun to show the full extent of what they could do. The galaxy would never be the same. The tension in the arena grew thick as the competitors prepared for the next round of the trials. The human team stood on the precipice of something far larger than they had anticipated. The previous victories had brought them respect, but with it came a storm of envy and spite from those who had underestimated them. There were whispers among the alien fighters about using the trials to send a message to the humans to put them in their place. It wasn't just a battle for the title anymore, it was a fight for dominance and control. The galaxy had seen what Earth's fighters could do, but they had not yet seen the full scope of humanity's resilience. In the hours before the next round began, the human leader gathered his team in their quarters. His voice was low but resolute. "We've shown them that we can win fair and square, but they won't let us keep this victory without trying to take us down. They will find ways to challenge us, ways we can't predict." The other humans nodded, each of them aware that their success had made them a target, not just of the other competitors, but of the galaxy itself. They were no longer just fighters in a competition. They were symbols of something far more dangerous to the status quo they had, proven that humanity was not to be underestimated, and now the universe would do everything in its power to ensure they didn't become a permanent force in galactic affairs. As the team prepared for the upcoming trial, the arena buzzed with activity. The stage was set for a challenge unlike any before. The last trial had been a test of intellect and survival, but this one would be a test of combat, pure and unrelenting. It was a brutal gauntlet designed to push the competitors to the very edge of their endurance and strength. A series of opponents would emerge one after the other, each more powerful than the last, and the humans would have to face them without rest or respite. Each match was a fight to the death, and there would be no time for strategy or preparation. Each fighter had to rely on their raw abilities and instincts. The humans knew that this would be the moment when the galaxy's strongest fighters would pull out every trick, every power, and every advantage they could to defeat them. The leader's eyes narrowed as he thought about the growing conspiracies among the alien factions. He could feel the weight of their stares from across the arena, the glares from those who were willing to stop at nothing to see them fail. The humans had come far, but this next trial would be a true test of their will and their unity. They could not afford to let their guard down. When the first opponent emerged from the arena's massive gates, the crowd fell into stunned silence. The creature was unlike anything the humans had seen before. It was a towering behemoth made of solid stone, its skin jagged and sharp like a living mountain. It had no eyes, no mouth, just a massive frame that seemed to pulse with an energy, so thick it vibrated the air. The alien fighter looked down at the humans with a sense of indifference, and the crowd knew this would be a challenge like no other. The first human stepped forward without hesitation. Their muscles were tense, but their movements were calm. Their strategy was simple. They would fight with everything they had and use every ounce of their training to find the one weakness in the massive stone creature. But it quickly became apparent that brute force would not work. Against this opponent, the creature's skin was nearly impenetrable and its massive fists crushed anything in their path. It moved with surprising speed for something so large, and the human found themselves dodging more than attacking. The alien fighters watched in quiet amusement, expecting the human to fall quickly, but the human didn't falter. The human leader observed carefully from the sidelines. The key wasn't overpowering the stone giant, but using its momentum against it. The human fighter baited the creature into a series of wild attacks, each time narrowly dodging the blows and leading the creature into a series of traps. It was then that the humans struck their moment, arriving with precision. They used the creature's own weight and momentum against it, pulling the giant forward into a massive pit that had been hidden beneath the arena floor. The creature roared in fury, but it was too late. The pit was designed to trap, and the massive alien was pulled into it with a crushing force. The crowd gasped as the stone creature fell and the human fighter stood victorious. The first match had been won, but the humans knew this was just the beginning. They had survived the first challenge, but there were many more to come, and each would be even more deadly than the last. The alien spectators were no longer laughing, but they were not ready to admit defeat. The other competitors watched as the humans continued to survive against the odds. Their ability to read their opponents, adapt to their weaknesses, and exploit them with such cold precision was a sight to behold. The respect that the humans had earned in the arena was now matched by fear and uncertainty. They had become the dark horse, the underdog, that no one wanted to face. The next wave of competitors arrived quickly and without mercy. They were faster, stronger, and more powerful than anything the humans had faced before. But the humans had something they didn't have. They had each other. They worked together in perfect harmony, each fighter knowing exactly what their team needed at any given moment. They did not falter or hesitate. They were like a machine working in unison. They had been tested in every way, and they had proven that, no matter the odds, they could always find a way to come out on top. The galaxy was watching, and the humans had proven that they were not just survivors. They were contenders. They were here to win, and no matter how many trials they faced, they would never back down. They had earned their place among the greatest fighters the galaxy had ever known, and they were determined to hold on to it for as long as they could. As the trials progressed, it became clear that the humans were no longer seen as mere competitors. The galaxy had already learned that Earthlings were formidable adversaries in every sense of the word. But now the humans had become symbols of something far more dangerous than raw strength or agility. They represented a challenge to the very foundation of the galactic hierarchy, a challenge to the established power structures that had reigned for millennia. The quiet whispers of jealousy and fear had turned into open hostility as the most powerful factions began to plot against them. The time for subtle sabotage had passed, and now the galaxy's elite warriors were preparing to take down the humans in ways that no one could have anticipated. The human team felt the shift in the air with each passing day. They had been victorious in every challenge, but now they knew they were being watched by more than just the spectators. The stakes were higher, and the risks were greater than they had ever been before. There were no longer any moments of relaxation or celebration. Every move they made was scrutinized, every action a potential opening for someone to strike. A growing sense of unease crept into their thoughts, but they did not let it show on their faces. They had faced the unknown before, and they knew they had the strength and determination to face whatever was coming next. The next trial was to be the final test, a culmination of everything that had come before. It was set to take place in the heart of a massive asteroid field, where the fighters would face not only each other but the very environment itself. The asteroids were scattered across vast distances, some so large that they could block out the stars. Their surfaces were rugged and unforgiving, and their gravity made movement difficult and unpredictable. It was a place where survival depended on one's ability to adapt to ever-changing conditions, and where the risk of death was ever present. The challenge was simple in concept: reach the center of the asteroid field and retrieve the artifact that lay at its core. But nothing in the trials had ever been simple. The human team readied themselves for the final trial, and as they did, they couldn't ignore the growing sense of tension around them. Every step they took in the arena seemed to provoke a reaction from their fellow competitors. The air crackled with unspoken threats, and the humans knew that this trial would not just be about skill or strength. It would be about outlasting their opponents and surviving against forces that no one had anticipated. The trial began with the blast of a horn signaling the start of the race toward the center of the asteroid field. The competitors shot forward like missiles propelled by their advanced technologies and combat prowess. But the humans took a different approach. They knew that this was not just a race to the finish line. They needed to survive the obstacles and the environment first and foremost. The human leader signaled for the team to spread out and begin maneuvering through the field. Using their advanced knowledge of physics and their ability to think critically under pressure, they adjusted their trajectories. To avoid the worst of the debris and the unpredictable gravitational pulls of the massive asteroids, the alien competitors followed in close pursuit, but their arrogance led them to take more risks. They rushed headlong into the asteroid field using their superior speed and strength to plow through obstacles while the humans carefully navigated around them. It wasn't long before the first group of aliens made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the asteroid field's dangers and had flown too close to a massive asteroid with an unstable orbit. The gravitational pull was too strong, and the ship was pulled into the asteroid's surface with an explosive crash. The competitors inside never stood a chance. The humans had avoided the catastrophe by taking a more measured approach. The leader of the human team watched the aftermath of the crash with calm precision. His mind was already calculating their next moves, while his team worked together to avoid the next set of obstacles. They knew that their success depended on their ability to keep their cool and stay focused on the task at hand. They couldn't afford to be reckless or hasty. The other competitors might have been fast, but the humans had something far more valuable. They had adaptability. They had unity. As the human team moved deeper into the asteroid field, the challenges only grew more dangerous. Massive asteroids began to break apart under the pressure of unseen forces, and the remnants sent shockwaves through the field. The humans continued to adjust their paths, avoiding the debris and maintaining their focus while the alien competitors struggled to keep up. The asteroid field was unpredictable, and it was clear that the humans had learned how to read the signs of danger in ways their opponents couldn't. The final stretch of the trial was the most dangerous of all. The artifact lay at the very heart of the asteroid field, a floating relic that glowed with an otherworldly light. The competitors could feel the intense gravitational pull drawing them toward the artifact, but they also knew that it would be a trap for those who rushed forward in haste. It was a test of patience as much as skill, and the humans showed remarkable discipline. As they approached the artifact, they didn't rush. They didn't fight the environment. They simply adjusted their movements and prepared to claim what was theirs. But as the humans drew closer to their goal, something unexpected happened. The other alien competitors who had been behind them in the race suddenly surged ahead. They had been waiting for the right moment to strike, and now they saw their chance. The humans were close to the artifact, and they would stop at nothing to ensure that. The humans would never claim victory. There was no more subtlety or gamesmanship now. It was a full-scale assault designed to break the human spirit. The human leader realized the stakes were higher than ever, and he knew that this would be the most difficult test of all. They had outlasted every challenge they had faced, but now they would need to fight not only the environment and the obstacles, but their enemies themselves. The final trial was upon them, and the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. As the human team moved toward the artifact, they could feel the weight of the entire galaxy watching them. The asteroid field pulsed with danger, its gravitational forces threatening to pull them in every direction. But the humans did not falter. They had learned to adapt and fight smarter than any of their competitors, and now they were closing in on the artifact, the prize that would declare them the champions of the galaxy. As they approached the artifact, a brilliant light filled the space around them. It shimmered with an almost mystical energy, and its glow seemed to call to the humans, as if it recognized them as worthy. But the others were not about to let them take the prize without a fight. The alien competitors who had been trailing behind had now surged forward. They knew that this was their last chance to claim victory, and they were willing to sacrifice everything to prevent the humans from winning. The human leader turned to his team, his eyes cold and determined. He knew that the time for strategy had passed. Now they would have to fight with everything they had left. They had come so far, and there was no turning back. The humans stood together in formation, ready to face whatever came next. The first alien competitors lunged at them with terrifying speed and power. They were faster and stronger, but the humans had something they didn't have. A bond formed through countless trials, and a shared resolve that made them stronger than the sum of their torsi parts. The human leader signaled, and the team spread out, working in perfect unison to fend off their attackers. The battle raged on with explosions and energy blasts filling the air as the humans fought back with unmatched precision and agility. They knew the asteroid field was not just an obstacle now. It had become a battlefield, and they would use every advantage they had. The humans were outnumbered, but their teamwork and intelligence gave them an edge. While the alien fighters relied on their strength and powers, the humans used their environment to their advantage. They dodged and weaved between asteroids using the rocks as shields and weapons. They baited their opponents into traps, forcing them to make mistakes that would turn the tide in the humans' favor. The galaxy watched in awe as the humans' unyielding spirit and cleverness overcame the raw power of their rivals. The battle was not easy. The alien competitors were relentless, but the humans never gave up. They fought with the heart of warriors who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The leader of the human team struck with deadly precision, his movements calculated and fluid as he knocked an opponent off balance and sent them spiraling toward an asteroid. The rest of the team followed his lead with perfect synchronization. Each human fighter took down their foes one by one with skill and discipline that left the spectators in stunned silence. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the humans reached the artifact, but their victory was not guaranteed yet. A final opponent appeared from the depths of the asteroid field, a figure cloaked in dark armor with eyes that burned like embers. They were a being unlike anything the humans had faced before, a combatant so powerful that even the other alien competitors hesitated in fear. The human leader narrowed his gaze and knew that this was the final test, the ultimate challenge to prove that humans were not just lucky survivors, but the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever seen. The battle that ensued was nothing short of legendary. The cloaked figure was fast and brutal, but the humans were not intimidated. They had faced worse. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. With every strike and every movement, the humans chipped away at the figure's defenses, until at last the human leader saw his opening. He struck with precision, his weapon slashing through the figure's armor and revealing the face. Beneath it was not an alien but a human, a former champion of the trials who had been corrupted by power and sought to destroy humanity's future. The crowd gasped as the truth was revealed. The humans had not only defeated their enemies in battle, but they had exposed the depths of the corruption that ran through the galaxy's elite. The final combatant had been sent to stop them from claiming victory, but in the end it was the humans' courage and unity that brought them to the forefront. With one final strike, the human leader sent the corrupted champion crashing into the depths of space. The artifact was now theirs. The humans had proven themselves not just as survivors, but as the greatest fighters the galaxy had ever seen. They had shattered every expectation and defeated every challenge that had come their ways. They stood together victorious. The human leader turned to his team and spoke, "We've done it. We've shown them all what humans are capable of. We're not just another species. We are the greatest force in the galaxy." The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the humans claimed their place among the stars. They had faced impossible odds and come out on top. Their victory was not just about winning the trials. It was about showing the universe that humanity was not to be underestimated. They had proven that no matter how many trials or enemies they faced, they would always rise stronger and more determined than before. The humans had taken their place as the galaxy's greatest fighters, but the journey was far from over. There would be new challenges, new battles, and new trials to face. But for now, the humans stood united as the victors of the greatest competition the galaxy had ever known. And as the final echoes of battle faded into the distance, they knew one thing for certain. The galaxy had just met its greatest adversaries, and they were humans. The last battle had ended, and the arena was filled with silence. The human team stood tall at the center of the vast space, their bodies battered, but their spirits unbroken. The artifact gleamed before them, a symbol of their triumph. But it was not the object they had fought for. It was the respect, the acknowledgement that they had earned from the galaxy's greatest warriors. The arena that had once been a place of mockery and skepticism now stood as a testament to the power of humanity. The galaxy had seen the humans for what they truly were, not just survivors, but warriors who could overcome any obstacle thrown at them. And now there was no denying it. They had claimed their victory and their place among the stars. The alien competitors who had once laughed at the idea of humans as contenders now stood in awe of them. Their defeat was not just physical, it was mental. Every alien in the arena had witnessed the humans' strength not just in battle but in their ability to outthink and outlast every challenge. Every step they had taken, every trial they had conquered had been a message to the galaxy, a message that no one could ignore again. As the final moments of the trial passed, the human leader looked around at his team. He saw the faces of his friends and allies, their expressions tired but proud. They had come together in the face of overwhelming odds, and they had emerged victorious. They had fought for their survival, for their honor, and for their future. They had proven that no matter what the universe threw at them, they would always stand tall. They had faced their darkest fears, their most dangerous foes, and they had won not just for themselves, but for every human who had ever been underestimated or dismissed. The human leader stepped forward and placed his hand on the artifact. It was not the prize that mattered. It was the journey that had led them here. The battles they had fought, the trust they had built, the sacrifices they had made. These were the true victories that no one could take from them. He turned to face his team and smiled. "We did it," he said simply. The others nodded silently, knowing that these words carried more weight than any victory speech ever could. They had done the impossible. They had conquered the trials. They had taken the place of the galaxy's greatest warriors, and in doing so, had changed the very perception of humanity forever. And then, the galaxy's leaders, the officials who had orchestrated the trials, began to move toward them. Their expressions were no longer filled with disdain or mockery, but respect. The highest among them stepped forward with an outstretched hand, his voice filled with, "How your victory is not just one of skill or strength, it is a victory of spirit and resilience. You have shown the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of." The human leader shook his hand firmly. "Thank you," he said with quiet pride. But there was something deeper in his eyes. Something that told the galaxy this was only the beginning. Humans had risen, and now they would shape their own future, one that was no longer defined by their enemies but by their own will. As the crowd began to cheer, the humans stood together, their hearts swelling with pride for the victory they had achieved. The cheers were not just for their physical prowess but for everything they had proven about humanity. They had shown the galaxy that they were not just a species to be underestimated. They were the future, they were the force that would not be ignored. And as the arena erupted in applause, the human leader stood tall once more, looking out across the stars. He knew that this victory was only the start. There would be new battles, new trials, and new enemies to face, but for now the humans had earned their place at the top. They had earned the right to be called the greatest fighters the galaxy had ever known, and no one would ever forget it again, and so the galaxy's greatest trial came to an end. But for the humans, it was only the beginning. Their journey had just begun, and as they looked to the stars, they knew that their place among the universe's greatest warriors was now. Secure the end.